Over the last 2 years, I've delivered close to 250 presentations to diverse suppliers as well as large corporate organizations who are focusing on supplier diversity. I often start with an opening gambit to help them understand the authenticity of my experience and what led me to build the Kaleida platform. Now, I spent about 23 years working within financial services. That was 11 years working with investment banks, say, for example, like at JP Morgan, where I was there for 5 years building technology teams, as well as about 12 or so years selling technology back to banks, asset managers, and hedge funds. And it was in those sales years I really experienced unconscious bias and its impact. Now, whenever I would walk into these rooms as a 6'5" black male, it was often apparent to me that there was very little to no representation in those rooms. No one of ethnic minority making senior executive decisions. Certainly no women who in that room sat down in the decision-making chair. There was no one who was visibly disabled apart from one occasion that I can recall over a 12-year career. And there was certainly no one who appeared to be LGBTQ+ or transgender. And so from that perspective, when there's very little to no representation in that room, it can be very hard to break what's called an affinity bias and most often an unconscious bias. Now, what I'd like to do is break down how unconscious bias, compounded by an affinity bias, can create imposter syndrome in the actual diverse supplier or the representative of the organization. You see, people do buy from people, and people do look for reasons why they have to buy from someone. It's not just always product, it's not always price. Sometimes it's down to the actual relationships you can create in that room. But where there is an affinity bias, it can really impact those outcomes, particularly if the person selling that business or service is actually diverse themselves. So Kaleida International was designed to help these corporate organizations who understand the impact of unconscious bias and the purpose of supplier diversity to help them find, identify, assess, and then invite diverse-owned businesses to participate in tenders and opportunities, but irrespective of the diverse identity. As a fully inclusive platform, our sole focus is to help the corporate organizations find these diverse suppliers whilst presenting opportunities for revenue generation to these diverse-owned businesses that they may not have access to because of the impacts of imposter syndrome. Now, often when I speak to these diverse-owned businesses, they often tell me why their businesses do not have their faces labeled or their ownership stamped across their site, and it's often because of the imposter syndrome that they will experience. No longer feeling that they are good enough to service these organizations, or worst of all perhaps, that if their business is known as being a woman-owned business, for example, in construction, they may then not get the business because there is a perception, a bias, a prejudice around women-owned businesses, particularly are those in construction, for example. So I built the Kaleida platform to help these organizations understand how to navigate those challenges based on my authentic experience as a 6'5" black male, and knowing that the best possible outcomes is to help these businesses get access to opportunity so they can change their outcomes by generating revenue because their services are good. It's very important to understand this though. Supplier diversity is not about assigning or rewarding or giving access to opportunities because someone is black, because someone is a woman. Supplier diversity is about creating access to opportunity, and then where possible, where good enough, where you can compete, only then be able to win the award. Supplier diversity looks at competency first and then diversity second. So that's my opening story. That's what I tell everyone when I give their presentation, to help them understand the impact that supplier diversity will have on future economies, and to give businesses that are diverse owned access to opportunities that they don't usually have.